Welcome back. This is Newsfile. It's your most authoritative news analysis show. And my guests, Dr. Odro Osai Eric, Dr. Gideon Bracco, and Yao Pong and Inus Ofuseni. Thank you very much for keeping your dials here on Joy 99.7 FM, on Love in Kumasi, and over a dozen affiliate stations across the country. And if you're listening on the internet, thank you also. If you're listening or watching on DSTV too, you're welcome. Now, I wanted to share a few of your messages on the Ameri deal before we proceed, but let me just start, and then in due course, I will or may share some of those views with you. Now, the Minister of Finance, Ken Ofori Atta, was in Parliament, and a number of things transpired. He seemed to have had good news, something that's never happened before. He didn't go to Parliament asking for more money. Always, he's been going there to ask for more money, but this time, he didn't ask for more money. He rather went to seek to reduce some of his expectations and give us some news, which he said was good news. But the minority seemed to have divergent views as expected. Let's watch or listening to a bit of what's happening in the House, and then we'll return to do the discussion.
For the first quarter of 2017 grew by 6.6% against 4.4% for the same period in 2016. Inflation reduced to 12.1% at the end of June 2017 from 15.4% at end December 2016. Interest rates are on the decline. For example, the 91-day Treasury bill rates have reduced from 16.4% at end 2016 to 12.08% at end June 2017. The fiscal deficit as a percentage of GDP for the period January to June 2017 was 2.7% compared with a deficit of 4% over the same period in 2016. The primary surplus for January to June 2016 was 0.6% of GDP compared to a deficit of 1.3% over the same period in 2016. And the gross international reserves at the end of June 2017 was $5.9 billion, equivalent of 3.4 months of import cover, up from $4.9 billion at the end of December 2016, equivalent to 2.8 months of import cover. Mr. Speaker, interest rates have responded to government's economic policies and are now trending downwards. The Bank of Ghana reduced its monetary policy rate MPR by 450 basis points from January to July 2017, 200 basis points from 25.5% to 23.5% in March 2017, by 100 basis points in May to 22.5%, and further by 150 basis points to 21% in July 2017. The trend of lower interest rates we are seeing is in direct response to the equally consistent declines in headline inflation and inflation expectations, and the general improvements in the macroeconomic fundamentals. In response, the average interest rate on the 91-day bill has declined since December 2016 from 16.81% to 12.10% in June 2017, while the rates on the 182-day Treasury bill rate fell from 18.5% in December 2016 to 13.28% in June 2016.
The Minister of Finance has reduced domestic interest payment by an amount of 657,000,05271 Ghana cedis to create the impression that the expenditure on domestic interest payment is being reduced. This is clearly artificial, compressed, and contrived. It is a blatant disregard for cut-off fiscal rules in accordance with the Financial Administration Act, FAR Regulation 193. Bank of Ghana also closes the books on the prior working day. Therefore, Ghanaians must be alarmed that the minister will unilaterally change a long-standing fiscal rules and indeed business rule with respect to only one particular expenditure, the interest payment, for the misplaced and selfish purpose of making the performance of the fiscal year or the first half of 2017 look good. Ghanaians must be even more alarmed that the Bank of Ghana will reopen its books to allow this to happen. The budget did not state that the Ministry of Finance and Bank of Ghana applies the same rule to revenues that accrued on the 31st December 2016, but were paid on the next working day on January 4th, 2017. To be consistent, the Minister and the Governor should have reversed all cash buffers that were carried over to financial year 2017. We call on the Auditor General, Parliament, to immediately conduct an investigation into the violation of the long-standing cut-off fiscal rules by the Finance Minister. Clearly, the Minister lacks the authority to make the adjustment he made under the Financial Administration Regulation, FAR Regulation 193, on closures of accounts.
Today we have been told that when a head of a family fails to raise the revenue to feed his children and they sleep with hunger, we should praise them for it. You are supposed to raise revenue and provide services. You have failed. You say we should clap for you. Thank you very much. It is only under this government that you bring a budget that is approved on the 31st, and by the 1st of April, you take credit for January, February, March. It is only under this government. But what is the reality? The reality is very simple. The reality is very, very simple. Figures released by the Ghana Statistical Service indicates that as of June, Ghana's economy minus oil and gas grew by 3.9%. In the same period last year, with our oil, His Excellency John Dramani Mohammed government is 6.3%.
I've heard the Finance Minister speak eloquently about the very competent manner in which he and his team have managed the economy. Let me congratulate him, and also to tell him to hasten slowly. When he reaches a moment where inflation has gone down into single digits and kept there for a period of 3 years, he can come for some boasting. When he reaches a moment when he's able to grow the economy of Ghana to at least 14%, he can come for some praises.
Right, and so that was in Parliament, and you heard the Finance Minister speak. We brought you just a bit of what he had to say, and then you have the Ofori Atta, former Deputy Finance Minister, also speaking, to the press, leading the NDC minority, and in Parliament, just Isaac Adongo and also Fifi Kwete also spoke on the issues. On this matter, the minority didn't complain, but it looks like they were giving a
the majority spoke, except that theirs was not interesting.
Okay, so for you, and this is your comfort zone, for you, what were the highlights? What's significant? Why should we follow what the Finance Minister presented?
Yeah, Samson, thank you. I think it was an interesting moment in Parliament, and watching the Finance Minister deliver the media review to Parliament, he is enjoined by Section 28 of the Public Financial Management Act 2016, Act 921, to present to Parliament not exceeding July in every year. And so the Finance Minister eloquently articulated that, and this is the first media review under the PFMA. And like you rightly said, this one was also unique because uncharacteristic of previous media presentations in Parliament by the Finance Minister, this one, the Finance Minister did not go to Parliament to seek additional funding. And so this one also not having accompanying it a supplementary budget. Now, listening to the Finance Minister, as a Ghanaian, I think I was inspired. I see a lot of hope in the coming days in the management of our economy. Now, the indications from the media review sums up to three things. One, listening to the Finance Minister, you get understanding that there have been some prudent economic policies that have been instigated by this government. And then you see that there have been improvement in the fiscal discipline and also the competency in the management of the economy that have come to bear. And these have been influenced by certain factors, and you see them, as the Finance Minister said. The Finance Minister painted a picture, and which is what is actually on the ground, that both fiscal and primary balance, which is net government borrowing or net lending, excluding interest payments and liabilities on consolidated government liabilities, all of these have improved. the exchange rate appears to be very stable and is quite stable. We have inflationary pressures also easing and the interest rates coming down. Now, to be more specific, you would want to look at the presentation by the finance minister in maybe three main areas: the monetary side, the fiscal side, and i.e. how we can consolidate both monetary and the fiscal policies to achieve the kind of targets that we have. But if you want to look at it from the monetary side, it is important that if any attempt is made to kind of answer the question you put out, is it positive for government or positive for the minority, it's important we understand what the previous government left behind, i.e. what this government came to meet, what this government promised, and also juxtapose that against whether or not this government has been able to deliver on its promises. And it is quite important to note that on assumption of office, this government inherited a high fiscal deficit of 9.3%, which is so high. We had a primary deficit of 1.4%. We had a high debt to GDP ratio beyond the sustainable threshold of about 73.1%. Inflation was about 15.5%. And credit to the private sector, and this was influenced by government decision to consistently borrow from the domestic market through the treasury bill. So, investors or banks were not willing to lend to the private sector, but rather they found comfort lending to government. There was weak domestic revenue, low external reserves of 2.8 months of import cover, and a weak economic growth, 3.5%, the lowest in 15 years. So the economy as a general was not the best. So government came into office and revised, look at these figures and made some kind of propositions and expectations. So we expected in the March budget that our overall GDP was going to grow by 6.3%, non-oil GDP rate of 4.6%, end year inflation of 11.2%, average inflation of 12.5%, overall deficit of 6.5% on GDP, and primary surplus of 0.4%. The question is, today, what has this government been able to achieve vis-a-vis what we came to meet and what we promised? So if you look at the figures, nobody should tell you that this government has really done well, managed the economy well, to the extent that things have begun to pick up. As we speak today, the GDP for the first quarter of 2017 is 6.6%.
6.3?
6.6%. Okay. We promised 6.3, but now we have done 6.6. So that tells you that the desire to get 6.3 cannot be thwarted by anything. We will definitely get there. Now, inflation, we have reduced it from 15.4% to 12.1%. Our interest rates are on decline, and the treasury bill rate consistently has declined from 16.4% to 12.8%. We've been able to reduce our budget fiscal deficit to 2.7%, and also we have a primary surplus. This one exceeding what we even set to achieve by end of the year, 0.4%, and now we are at 0.6%. And then our gross international reserves now cover over 3.4 months of import cover, even though we had said in the budget as was read in March that we wanted to do 3 months of import cover. So that kind of gives the indication that government has been able to manage things well. And now the business and the consumer confidence surveys that was done by the Bank of Ghana give a positive indication, positive sentiments from the Ghanaian people, which is underpinned by the rational expectation theory as we put it in economics. And today we have Fitch, which is a rating agency that rates issuer default ratings for countries, moving us from B negative to stable. So it sums up to the point that the overall macroeconomic picture looks quite good and positive for Ghana, and that is something that we need to applaud this government for. On the fiscal side, the budget deficit issue was some major pain, and every government will want to get out of it. And that is what we sought to do, because it is the deficit that has taken us to the IMF program. And the IMF program seeks to instill discipline and credibility to the economic management so that we get out of the high deficit arena. Today, as we speak, we've been able to consistently move the deficit from the 9.3 and we are 2.something%, and we seek to end the year with 6.3 and consistently reduce it next year so that we win ourselves from the IMF program. On the debt management, you realize that when this government came into office, we were saddened with huge debt, and that is why our debt to GDP ratio was quite astronomical. And therefore, the debt service payments was almost 45% of total domestic revenue, which was not good for us. So if you take that one out and you take salaries and all that from that, and then the statutory funds that government has to pay, government was left with nothing to use in managing this economy. And so every government will want to take prudent measures as to how best it can redefine and redesign the debt structure so that there can be some breathing space and have other opportunities to also get some amount of money to develop the nation. And that is why...
If we can pause on that, if we can pause on that, because I know it's a difficult one for you, because this is really where you belong, and when you are being stopped, and you are dealing with the matter, it's uncomfortable. Let me bring in Yusuf Husseini briefly. Now, I don't know, I gave him sort of a blank check.
Oh, don't worry.
Yes, but for the minority also, we understand that your immediate reaction, including that the minister was cooking up figures and all of that, is it sort of a ritual that we should understand will always happen? No matter what is done by a government, the minority will find faults with it. You listen to how
it's not a ritual. It's not a ritual. In fact, it's well founded, and we urge the civil society organization to look into the matter. It's well founded. It's not ritual. It's about, we raise the law. I mean, it's about compliance. Okay, and so I mean, when you talk of corruption, corruption is not only taking money. Is bastardizing the legal regime.
So these are his highlights, and he speaks to specific issues.
Yes.
Can you lift again, for the purpose of our audience, who may not have listened to Castle Atufo saying, or have listened to Isaac Adumo, what is it about the mid-year review that he presented that you have issues with, and what are the issues, really?
Well, first of all, I mean, you should know that the mid-year review is very cosmetic, very, very. We've raised the issue about the growth. First quarter growth, 3.9, non-oil sector, okay?
We want to talk about the total growth.
Non-oil sector, 3.9, against 6.3 in the first quarter of 2016. And what is the non-oil sector? It means the monies and activities that take place in this country outside oil. It means that is not growing. We've raised issue about the cut in expenditure, which is constricting the economy, which is making the economy not grow. We've raised issue about fall in revenue mobilization, which is affecting goods and services in the ministries. And this government thinks that it's doing well. We think that something is fundamentally wrong. And that's why we are raising these matters.
We have heard about a better economic prospect, which the NDC has sought to claim, credit for.
Yes.
To say the NPP administration has not done anything yet to want to take credit for anything.
Nothing.
Yes.
Nothing.
So if you are taking credit for something that is happening now as something you engineered, why can't the NPP not also take credit for what they believe?
What credit are we taking for? If we say that inflation has been falling, we're saying that there's a trend. And this is underpinned by the strong macroeconomic policies that we put in place. That's the credit we are claiming. We are not claiming credit for things that are based on policies that are initiated by the MPP. And we're saying that in any case, you don't introduce a budget in March and then come to claim credit for things that happened before March. And I'm saying that
so everything that has gone wrong then, that in your opinion, everything that has gone wrong should be put at your doorstep.
What has gone wrong?
You should take the blame.
You're talking about the deficit, and you have not even garnered enough revenue, the tax revenue, to even spend. And you
note it.
Yeah. So you have not garnered enough tax revenue to spend, and so you are not even able to meet your deficit target. You underperform. You perform better because there's no money. You have not put money in the system. There's no money. And we go to the market and say there's no money in the system, and you take it as a credit. We won't take that as a credit. But why is now oil sector? Why is the oil sector performing?
It tells you of the deficit of 9.1, is it? And you should take note of that. What did you leave for them?
We left a deficit of 9.3%. That's true. They came they want to reduce it to 6.3%. They're working at it. Okay, we're waiting to see how they are going to make it. But what we are saying is that the deficit, the reduction itself, is not informed by any major policy underpinning. It's because they have failed to spend. There's no money. That's what we're saying. Because there's no money, what you're not printing money because you are borrowing, and so for us, whatever deficit they are recording now is largely due to the fact that there's no expenditure. Government is not even encouraging the private sector. Why is the private sector complaining? Why? You say interest rates are coming down, yes, underpinned by the fact that inflation is dropping, but cost of borrowing is not coming down. Why? You are an economist. You should be able to explain that. Why is that so? Because the system doesn't allow for money to get into the into the banks in such a way that the banks can lend to the private sector to grow, to create jobs. No, nothing is happening that way. And so, for us, MPP is taking credit where they ought not to take credit. Why is the oil sector growing? We had put in place policies, and the oil sector itself grew by 58.9%, basically based on the 10 projects and the increase in production at the Jubilee fields. This is not the work of MPP. They didn't, did they go to pump more oil out of the fields? Or did they bring the 10? They only went to commission the 10 fields.
Okay.
So you can see even a better economic. You can even see a better economic management under the NDC, because even in the face of bad commodity prices on the world market, our local non-oil revenue grew by 6.3%.
Now, Dr. Osai, the finance minister says that, quote, "We want to provide good economic environment for businesses in particular and to get Ghana working again. And I am happy to say that the economy is stable. Inflation is trending downwards. The CD has stabilized. Interest rates are lower," unquote. This is good news.
It is good news. But I always want to advise that we should not be in a hurry to rejoice. Sustainability is important in economic management. And I want to also believe that the Minister for Finance presented to us the 2017 budget. Though in the first 3 months, the budget had already been prepared before the government came to power. So technically, what he presented to us is implemented 3 months. Ideally, I would have wished that in November, if he presents a review of the entire economic performance to Parliament, then we can draw conclusions from that. But I am happy about some of the developments, except that there are a few that I think that they need to look at, most especially in their manifesto, when they promised that they were going to pass a fiscal responsibility law and then set up a fiscal council. That council is so important because the need for a policy reconciliation between monetary and fiscal policy is very important in ensuring that an economy can develop. Aside from that, I also noticed that the regulations on the PFM Act has not been passed. And we are priding ourselves with doing well under a financial administration regulation, which was supposed to support an FAA, which has been repealed. That, for me, is one of the fundamentals we need to quickly work on. And I also noticed that the government said it is going to introduce a numerical fiscal rule to guide the implementation of fiscal policy. And then they want to amend the Public Financial Management Act to the extent that they will limit the fiscal deficit within a range of 3 to 5%. This is good news. Question then is, when is this going to happen? So I think that the indicators are good, but I don't want to be in a rush to draw conclusions. I wait until they present us a full review in November when they submit the 2018 budget to Parliament.
And the fiscal responsibility, fiscal responsibility legislation is so important to Dr. Drosai.
So much.
When the economy comes up, he never ceases to mention it. Now, the minister also revealed something that government has saved or is saving the country an estimated $1 billion, by revising what he called overpriced gas supply contract. Yet another good news, isn't it?
Yes, it is indeed. And also, I think the high point is really the demonstration of kind of, if you like, honesty. Because, for example, I see at point 12, he explains why growth in 2016 was slow. But, Mr. Speaker, as he said, Mr. Speaker, the slowdown in growth in 2016 was largely underpinned by substantial contraction in cocoa, in the cocoa subsector, in the petroleum subsector. The decline in petroleum subsector was largely because of the downtime that occurred because of the damage to the turret bearing of the FPSO Kwame Nkrumah. So I think that this is something that should be commended. Perhaps your friends didn't see this point, that when people actually said that you were not performing because of incompetence. Now you get a minister who is now even holding brief for you that, yes, of course, he uses the word largely. So incompetence may be an unnamed variable. This is a person who has admitted that you could have done better if these debilitating factors had not bedeviled your management of the economy. So I think that sometimes you also give credit when it is due.
For saying what was right.
Well, if he says what is wrong, you complain, even if it's wrong at all. So when it comes to review, I think that is all that management of the economy is about. When you enter into a contract and you believe that maybe due to some inadvertence or maybe sheer negligence or lack of knowledge, you are going to be worse off. Nothing stops the parties from sitting down to renegotiate in good faith. And when it was done, in most cases, the parties didn't complain, especially those who are going to be worse off. They never complain, at least substantially. And it has saved us so much. And so it is an example that I think is worth emulating. And I looked at the supplementary budget that Mr. Tekpe presented almost about a year last year, 25th July, and this was 31st July. He starts by asking for more money.
There's no money to ask for.
He starts by
unless you're going to issue more
asking
bonds
for supplementary cash. This time at least.
1.8.
1.888.203.3387.
Yes.
I think that is the unfairness part, with all due respect. If you are unable to collect the revenue or receive the revenue that you had estimated or anticipated, nothing compels you to continue to implement those policies. And I think that is what this minister is doing.
Okay.
That we estimated that, and you see, even the remarkable show of honesty is also because he has come to you, which is something you are using against him. You approve that we should spend so much as a result of the amount you will receive. We think we will fail.
Okay.
And I think that is good.
I'll take a very brief break here. When we return, Dr. Boako has written down a few points, and he would respond to them quickly before we close the curtains on this. We'll be right back. And, Doc, you, like I said, what do you have been itching to respond to some issues?
So
Yeah.
A few responses. Honorable talks about the issue of falling revenue, and we admit that fact that our revenues fell beyond what we had expected, and I think that's not new. It's been typical of every beginning of every year. So this revenue we're talking about, we have the first quarter and the second quarter. Actually, the revenue in the second quarter is what we can link to the budget of this government. In the first quarter, revenue is linked to the budget of the previous government, and so that was woefully inadequate. And even if you look at the revenue on month basis, you could see that from January to April, consistently it was reducing. About April to May to June, there's been an upward tick in the revenue. And historically, our revenue figures get increased as we get to the third and the fourth quarter. So we took a policy, decision that is quite different from what the previous government did. They were tasked to get revenue. We think that we should ease taxation and move to production. And the policies we spelled out in the budget are yet to yield the kind of results we wanted to see. And so I'm telling you that the revenue figures as we go forward will increase. So the first quarter revenue can be linked to your budget. So that is what we need to do.
Why you presented the budget? So you didn't know that the projection you gave will result to lower revenues.
On the expenditure, I get worried. I get worried when the NDC, the minority side, tend to say that, oh, we are cutting expenditure. What else could we do? Our revenues are not coming as expected. And we are with the IMF because we lack policy credibility. And this credibility issues came because our deficit was increasing. Deficit arose because we spent more than we could get. Now, the revenues were not coming as a result of your budget in the first quarter. Okay? And so
no, it's not our budget. It's your budget.
No, in the first quarter.
So you spend what you have.
What this government has decided to do is live within our means and spend what we have. And that is perfectly what everybody must do. If you don't do that, you plant yourself into trouble. Right. And you get into the situation that you find yourself that led you to IMF. And all of us think that we need to wean ourselves from the IMF. Think of it. If you have a farm and you can till 1 acre, and the 1 acre you require 5 personnel to work on the farm. If the same 1 acre, you say they're going to bring additional 5 people, the net effect is that the marginal productivity will begin to decrease. That is a diminishing marginal productivity. Yeah. So in this case, we are trying to be prudent, to live within our means, and see that until we are able to increase our revenue base, we don't go beyond our
except that when you were presenting the budget, you didn't want to live within your means.
In some 30 seconds, tell me about this. When the finance minister says that, you know, you've been able to renegotiate or sort of been able to bring down the prices on these gas supplies, and you are saving
1 billion.
An estimate of 1 billion. Yeah. Does it mean that some wrong was found somewhere?
You see, the special
because the thing is that the pronouncement was that the previous government overpriced.
Yes, I said that to give an indication. That's right. There are a lot that are coming. Okay, a lot of what went on in the previous
surcharging should be issued.
Exactly, and contracts were overpriced. This is not the first time. Even at Boss, a contract was renegotiated, and we saved about $19 million or so. So that there were a lot of contract overpricing. So let me take this. The Deputy Finance Minister Former talks about cooking figures. Please, with all due respect, that is not right. The interest payment he's talking about, and we have an accountant here. The interest payment is talking about arises as a result of government overdraft he took from the Bank of Ghana. And this overdraft, the interest was supposed to be paid every 6 months. So even this year we have paid. Next December we have to pay. Now, on 31st of December, they could not pay. But controller deals with modified accounting. And so he had released. And once it is released, it is counted as part of expenditure in the previous government.
Thank you, Dr. Thank you, Dr. Gideon Gwako. Thank you, Dr. Gideon Gwako. Dr. Gideon Gwako is the technical economic advisor, Office of the Vice President, Salaji Dr. Mahmoud Baumia. The Honorable Inusa Fuseni is MP, Tamale Central, Ranking Member, Legal and Constitutional Committees of Parliament. Yao Pong is a lawyer and also teaches the law at Central University. Dr. Eric Odro Osai is a lawyer and Dean of the Graduate Studies, Institute of Local Government Studies. I'm Samson Ladi Ayenene. We'll come your way next week, God willing, with another show.